Ghost in New York City by A Shark's Reading Glasses on AO3. Description: a visit to a family friend in New York creates the circumstances for an unlikely meeting between two heroes and an antihero, but who's counting? Shenanigans are likely to obviously endure, but not everything is as it seems in the Falcon household, and once Peter and Wade convince Danny that his parents' behavior isn't healthy, Danny has to fight to get out from under his parents' thumb. When Danny finally emancipated, has one final challenge to face: his mother rejecting his ghost half, and even worse, Vlad Master and his obsession with Danny himself. Chapter 1: Heroes About. The only good thing about this trip, Danny mused as he flew invisible towards Central Park in the New York skyline, is the sightseeing. When Danny's parents had casually mentioned that the whole family would be going on a cross-country road trip to visit a family friend in New York City during the summer break, Danny almost had a fit. The last road trip had nearly killed his parents, and he had earned a fair amount of bumps, bruises, and ectoplasm burns. Danny had tried to weasel out of it by arguing that he had plans with Sam and Tucker, but his parents had stated that he was too young to be by himself for that long. Angry about the remark, Danny had told them it wasn't fair that they'd sprung this on him and his sister without prior warning. And Jazz surprisingly took his side. Their parents had hesitated, but eventually agreed after a fair amount of wheeling, and said that they would allow them any and all free time they wanted when they hit New York. After breaking the news to Sam and Tucker, all three of them had sucked over to Nasty Burger to drown their woes in grease. Tucker had practically bounced back after a few bites of his burgers, and had adamantly gave him tourist activities he could do in New York. Dude, Tucker had started while sipping his drink. Think about it. No parents, free reign of the New York City. You'll have an awesome time. Doing what? Danny grippled, drowning his fries in ketchup. Going to a museum without you guys would be boring, and wandering around New York sounds like asking for trouble. I never said you had to enjoy the sights as a human, Tucker said, smugly, puffing his chest. Danny paused and looked up from his French fry massacre. You want Danny to go sightseeing in New York as a ghost? Sam clarified, taking a long sip from her smoothie. Did your brain overheat in your barrette? Danny snorted, and Tucker gasped. Did your brain overheat in your barrette? Taking a long sip from her smoothie. Did your brain overheat in the corrette? Danny snorted, and Tucker gasped indignantly. Come on, guys, it's a great idea. Danny, you're always telling us how amazing Amity looks from in the air. Think about how awesome New York would look. And if anybody messes with you, they're toast. Tucker paused to take another bite of his burger and then gritted slyly. Besides, maybe you'll meet another hero. Have to admit it, Tucker, Danny thought, while flying in the air and watching aerobatics ring performance. This is pretty cool. After haunting Central Park for nearly 3 hours, Danny could finally confess that he was having fun. It was just so interesting to be a ghost during the daytime without having to worry about destruction, doom, and boxes, and just be able to enjoy the sights like everyone else. In Amity, he was usually active during the night when most people were asleep and the streets were quiet. But right now, in the afternoon, New York was teeming with people. Before this, Danny would have never had considered himself a people-watching person. But here he was, couldn't stop. New York City was just so active, like the city itself was alive in a way that Amity wasn't. Maybe that was because Amity Park was a ghost town? Although Danny thought as he spotted someone with a purple and yellow mohawk just casually going on an afternoon jog, that might be because of the people. New York must just breed and attract a certain type of colorful people like Emily bred and attract certain types of obsessive ghosts. Danny followed the jogger with his eyes before they rounded a corner, and his attention went to a dog walker on a skateboard attached to an obscene amount of dogs. Danny sipped so he was overhead and watched as the doggos hoarded seamlessly, waving in between throngs of people before he spotted a public bathroom. He went intangible and discreetly checked if it was empty before turning human and going back out into the park. Following his nose to a hot dog stand and getting something to eat, he continued wandering around, taking videos of performance and tipping performers as he went. Then he spent an hour and half wandering around before figuring he should start making his way back to the hotel his family was staying at. He found another bathroom to go ghost and leisurely floated invisibly about 2 stories high between buildings, stopping every once in a while to observe graffiti tags and murals. Just as he was about to call it quits and actually make his way to the hotel, he spotted an opening between buildings that would be a perfect shot of New York's skyline. He darted higher into the sky, his legs merging together into the ghostly tail as he circled around what something red caught his eye and he slowed. He then got a good look at what caught his attention. Danny's jaw dropped. No way, Danny thought as he stared. Is that Spider-Man? Oh my god, it is! Danny slowly circled around the spider-themed hero, who was bouncing on top of a flagpole like a sentient gargoyle. Unable to help himself from getting a closer look, Danny flipped himself over so that he was floating upside down in front of the hero, far enough that Spider-Man wouldn't hit him if he started to swing. He curled up in a ball of excitement and squished his cheeks together in amazement glee. Danny knew that Tucker had been semi-serious when he joked about meeting another hero. New York was infamously full of them. Luke Cage in Harlem, Daredevil in Hell's Kitchen, Iron Fist in Chinatown, Spider-Man in Queens, and not to mention Iron Man. But to actually meet one? With childlike wonder, Danny leaned in closer to look at the reflective lenses on the mask when Spider-Man jerked back. Startled, Danny jerked back as well before the hero spoke. Hey, who's up here? Spider-Man asked, as the lens on his mask narrowed into the horizon. So he paused and asked incredulously, And how are you up here? Danny smiled in delight as he realized the other hero could sense him. He leaned his head on his hands as he oriented himself so that he was floating on his stomach and mischievously circled around the hero, watching as the other looked around for him, the lenses on his mask opening up like a camera lens. Seriously? Spider-Man grumbled, in the opposite direction. After a few more minutes of Danny playing hot and cold around him. Where? How? Danny sat up so that he was sitting crisscross in the air with his hands in his lap, and let out a tiny chuckle. Spider-Man whipped his head around so that he was staring at Danny. Danny thought briefly what he was about to do was a bad idea, but decided to do it anyways. After all, Danny thought, I can't meet my hero if I'm invisible. Playing it safe, Danny turned tangible before becoming invisible. His body became pale green and slightly see-through, hoping he didn't startle the other hero too badly. Spider-Man predictably twitched back in surprise before leaning in with interest. Huh? Spider-Man said. You don't see that every day. Danny lifted one of his hands out of his lap and rubbed the back of his neck, shyly, embarrassed, but couldn't keep the grin off his face. Sorry for bugging you, Danny apologized. Not many people notice me. Spider-Man continued to look at him, then glanced down to the streets, then back to him. Dude, how are you doing that? Spider-Man asked, waving his hands underneath where Danny was floating. Kinda a ghost, Danny chuckled, putting his hand back into his lap and drifting closer to the hero as Spider-Man's lessons widen. That's like our thing. Kinda? How can you be kinda a ghost? Spider-Man asked, straightening up from his hunched position. Well, Danny grumbled nervously. It's, sort of complicated. Danny expected to get scolded for evading the question, but Spider-Man just laughed. Yeah, I bet it is, he said, lifting up the bottom of his mask so that his mouth was showing. Are you a new hero in New York? What's your name? A new hero in... Danny asked, then backpedaled. Oh, no. I am sort of a local hero where I'm from, but my parents are just visiting family friends. I'm just killing the time right now. And, Danny. My name is Danny Phantom. Awesome. Spider-Man smiled. What have you done in New York so far? Have you visited any of the museums? Oh, Danny stuttered. He wasn't expecting Spider-Man to be so friendly. I just hung out at Central Park all day. So far, people watching, you know? Spider-Man nodded. It's a good place to start. I totally recommend the Natural History Museum. I think they're having a limited space exhibit this week. Spider-Man commented, pushing his mask back down and sliding his feet off the pole to somehow stick to the sides, leaning his body weight out while one hand hindered to the pole like glue and the other hanging limp. Thanks, Danny replied, watching in awe. Spider-Man smiled again, his lenses squinting like he was beaming. Sweet. Hey, hope you don't mind, but I have to get back to my patrol. Hope you enjoy your stay, Spider-Man said, as he raised his arm and started to aim. Danny startled. Hey, wait, Danny said as he sipped forward, his legs transforming into a tail. Spider-Man paused and lowered his hands. Yeah, what's up? Spider-Man asked, nervously. Danny gulped and tried to get his thoughts in order. It's just... Danny started, his tail curling up as a nervous wrinkle in his hands. When I got these powers, I had a hard time controlling it, and I just had no idea what to do with them. But then, a couple months after I became like this, you started to get recognized and made a name for yourself. And it inspired me, and I wanted to ask, how do I do better? How do I get people to start looking at me like a hero and not a monster? I wanted to ask. Danny paused. Could I get a picture? Spider-Man paused, then shifted like he was making room. Sure, dude. Bring it in, Spider-Man said as he raised his hands in a peace sign. Danny smiled faintly as he got his phone from his pocket in his jumpsuit and held it up with his tail as he got into position. By the time Danny got back to the hotel, he was sneaking intangible and invisible through the window, hoping his parents were still busy. Jazz was reading a book on the bed, and his parents weren't in sight. He became visible and tangible, turning off his powers before face planting on the other bed. Jazz threw her book up in startled surprise before grabbing a pillow and whacking him on the back. Darn it, Danny, don't do that, Jazz said as she resettled herself. Danny huffed out, less amused. Sure, before throwing the pillow back at her. Jazz frowned at him. Are you still upset that you couldn't spend summer break with Sam and Tucker? She asked. Danny shrugged. I don't want to talk about it. Danny moped into the pillow as he flipped the hood of his hoodie he was wearing today over his face. Danny? Jazz said. You have a sticky note stuck on your back? Danny flipped his hoodie off and reached his arms around the back, groping for said note. Sure enough, a note was on his back, covered by his hood. He pulled it off with a bit more difficulty than he expected, and flipped over onto his back to inspect the note. It was folded in half with his hero name on the front, and a sticky, stringy substance on the other side. Danny immediately sat up in attention and unfolded the note. Hey, Danny, you seemed kind of down before I left. Sorry I couldn't stay longer. Frowny face. We should hang out a bit before you leave. I could show you some of my favorite people-watching spots. Shoot me a text when you have free time. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. XXX-XXX-XXXX. Danny, anything wrong? Jazz asked. Danny carefully refolded the note and stuck it in his pocket for safekeeping, smiling as he faced her. Nah, he said, leaning back on his bed in content. I think I just made a new friend. I am so excited to start this Podfic series. I have been beaming just the thought of starting it. It's like, ugh, I love this Podfic series so much. It is one of my favorites. Like fanfics. I love it so much. I have it downloaded. If I could turn it into a book, I would. Thank you to those who are watching that are normally here for my Hero Academia content and tuning in, even if you're not in the fandom. I very much appreciate that, and I really do suggest you just stay. You don't need to be in the fandoms to understand this fanfic or enjoy it. Those who have found my channel because of this fanfic and you are in those fandoms, hi, welcome! Welcome to my YouTube channel. I really love this fanfic. I cannot emphasize how much I love this fanfic. I love it so much. And to the author of this fanfic, A Shark's Reading Glasses, thank you so much for letting me podfic it. You do not know how much this means to me. And as always, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds, have a wonderful day or night. Join our community Discord server. Link is in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.